One of the things I was most nervous about was the idea of immersive theatre in that context, because normally when we make theatre where we are in and amongst the audience and we are creating a scenario or a narrative where we're playing with the idea that it's happening in real time in that space, an audience are completely aware that that's what's happening. They know it's a meta-theatrical construct and they know that they're playing along with the game, that they are within a story. And I was really nervous about how that works in a care home setting or a dementia care home setting where the lines around what is actually happening and reality might be quite blurred anyway. And I took a lot of reassurance from a lot of the experts that came in and chatted to us that that was okay and it was all right to make an immersive piece of work that was telling a story as though it was actually happening in the care home. And when I look back on it now, that's one of the major strengths of this piece, in that it is made very specifically for a care home setting, and it tells a story that engages with the space, with the environment, and it tells how a brilliant and wonderful story can happen in that environment, which is normally not seen as necessarily a creative space or a place where great adventures or stories happen. So that idea of taking the care home setting and making it a place that can be magical and can be at the heart of a story, I think was really exciting.
I will argue very strongly that there has to be a higher level, a higher degree of savvy, not only certainly in nonverbal communication and communication in general, but also in the level of what you're playing or acting or reciting, whatever it is you're doing, storytelling. The base example of that is if you have a book and you're reading it and you're just reading monologue and you're reading you might hold the attention, if it's an interesting story, of somebody who has their cognitive ability completely intact. But you certainly are not going to of somebody who is already having a hard time taking words in or taking in information and may have already learned over time what we call, sadly, learned helplessness, which there's also this vicious circle of, well, nobody's communicating with me and they're doing things to me. And I then shut down even more and much more quickly than I might have if I were stimulated and engaged. It will probably happen over time, yes. There's things that we can't stop. But that could be much more slowed down if there's that engagement and stimulation. So I have found that, yes, the level of playing, the level of performance, the level of acting, it has to be good. If you're trying to reach that group that is the hardest to reach, it has to be of a good quality. I really argue for that.
To my shame, I slightly turned my nose up at the idea when it was first mooted by Rachel that I might involve myself in this project, and how wrong was I? That's a confession, isn't it? So I would describe this as one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in terms of audience response and personal satisfaction.
Because of the conditions space-wise, you always end up singing closer. You perform closer to them. So there is, the eye contact. There is the smells. There is their reactions that very often are very verbal. They're very loud, and sometimes they join in. This is their interference is much more direct and present and freer to a certain extent than people in an audience who paid to see you perform. So it's, from start there is this big difference. So whether you want it or not, whether you prepare for it or not, they will interfere in what you're doing.
The singers fulfill a role there that is as much about their singing as about the value it communicates that they have bothered to turn up in that environment and sing for a small audience, for a small number of people. And it makes it absolutely clear that all of those lives matter and that they deserve a really high quality, brilliant performance in their own home.
We have got a major serious problem here about the lack of underfunding. Why haven't we solved it? It's a very complex issue. I could give you a paper on that about why we haven't solved the problem. But the essence of the answer is to have a contract between families, communities and the state. Now, why isn't that simple? Because in this country, sadly, we have lost our communities. We are a very fragmented country. So quality of life and paying for operas and all those things that are seen as extras actually are integral to having quality care. Because being neglected, and sadly people are in their own homes, sadly people are in care homes that are not well run. The essence of having quality of life and quality care is to have quality relationships with your friends and relatives and activities that are meaningful for you. With the right combination of that contract, with the funding being adequate, you will get people having access in the same way that you and I have access to high quality entertainment activity, and that gives us a sense of purpose, a sense of achievement, a sense of identity, and these are what gives us quality of life. We all need to have access to this. This is a right. It's not an added extra that your children should be paying for as another little kind of entertainment thing. It's so misunderstood. That attitude, I'm afraid, is the wrong way to look at older people and their needs for quality of life.
Now, one of the music therapists I spoke to who had a lot of experience with lots of different populations, but particularly with dementia, said to me, when she goes in and works with somebody with dementia, that's when she has to be at the top of her game. And I, at that time, this is about 7 years ago now, found that really surprising. Because the assumption, and I claim that guilt as well, was, well, you know, if you go into care homes, they will often say, you know, she's past, you know, we can do anything. That's why they have TVs blaring, and they just expect it doesn't matter because they're not responding, which of course is a vicious cycle or circle rather, because of course they're not responding because they're getting nothing to engage with.
I was really impressed with the way that the opera came out, and particularly the way that it had been designed to fit within frankly a domestic environment, albeit probably a relatively large-scale domestic environment, but into a relatively small room where there was not a lot of place to play with, and yet somehow the whole thing came to life. And within it, I mean, there's an element of humour. There was an element of a great medley of all the bits of opera that everybody's ever loved. So I absolutely loved it, and can see how particularly within a care home environment, it has to be cost effective to put on. It has to fit within a small space, and I think they just did the most amazing job of doing that.